Connarton, unleashed in the afternoon.
I guess this is just another lost cause, Mr. Payne. All you people don't know about lost causes. Mr. Payne does. He said once they were the only causes worth fighting for. And he fought for them once. For the only reason any man ever fights for them. Because of just one plain, simple rule. Love thy neighbor. And in this world today full of hatred, a man who knows that one rule has a great trust. You know that rule, Mr. Payne. And I loved you for it just as my father did. And you know that you fight for the lost causes harder than for any others. Yes, you even die for them. Like a man we both knew, Mr. Payne. You think I'm licked? You all think I'm licked. Well, I'm not licked. And I'm gonna stay right here and fight for this lost cause. Even if this room gets filled with lies like these. And the tailors and all their armies come marching into this place. Somebody will listen to me.
He's okay, just fainted.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Seth.
Ooh. I think that was Senator Lou D'Alessandro talking about Matt Connarton unleashed in the afternoon.
And you interrupted him.
Yes, you know how rude I am.
Well, you know, you got a globe here and you get all rude. That's what happens.
I can bring the goose over for you.
I don't need a goose. You know, my father is afraid of geese. He was attacked by some geese when he was a child, and that is genetic. I now carry that fear.
Oh, yes. They call that Lysenkoism in the USSR, but now we know it's all true.
I have Lysenkoism.
Well, welcome to Ward 13 with John Hopwood. Matt Connington is here, or whatever your moniker is.
You're
today.
close enough for rock and roll.
Because the slap I was hit with, the strategic lawsuit against public participation, is still causing stress.
Oh.
And my face went numb on your show yesterday, and I was slurring my words. In fact, my face is numb now. Just thinking about the joyousness of Manchester municipal politics. Matt, you had a guest on your show that...
I did, and I'm concerned that something happened to him.
I think that Jim O'Connell's got a hold of him.
He's not in here. But yes, Terence O'Rourke, Democratic congressional candidate for District 1 here in New Hampshire, was on today's edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed in the Afternoon, which you can find at the archive at wmnhradio.org. He joined us at about the, because I say us because you came in as well, at about the 5:15 mark. So about an hour and 15 minutes into the 2-hour program, in case you want to skip right to that. Although I can assure you everything leading up to that moment was sheer genius. but of mine. My
Yeah,
genius.
I did call in.
I'm a stable genius,
Around about 5:07.
You did, yes, you did.
I got a report that you were boring people with fake news about some economist, Haley Selassie or Ishkabibble or somebody.
It was exciting to me, exhilarating actually. No, seriously though, what happened to our guest?
I don't know. You want me to go look for him? I think he went out there and got either.
Oh, okay.
I think he got lassoed by Jim O'Connell. Who,
Oh, my
he
God.
actually did talk on the Jim O'Connell show, which might be a new record.
Well, I wondered,
here you are.
I wondered why Jim had a lasso and was wearing cowboy boots.
There's a goose over there if you'd like to bring her over. We use her on the baseball show when we attacked the New York Yankees.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Well,
Their goose is cooked.
hardly. They're half game up.
Well, Tanaka's hurt, right?
I don't know anything
He
about
knows
baseball.
nothing about baseball.
Oh,
He used to
okay.
have to go through it with me and Mr. Baseball.
I don't even know how many quarters are in a game.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
3.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Now,
But
Matt,
how many rounds are in a quarter?
don't you know your boxing? It's 10 if it's the WBC, and 12 it's the WBA.
12
Or
per
is
inning?
it? Okay, Matt, you take over.
Oh, all right,
For
I'm
now.
taking over. Well, joining us here,
Joining us.
because John's face is numb, joining us, that's why I'm taking over.
Okay.
I was thinking about municipal politics.
Yes. Terence O'Rourke, Democratic candidate for CD District 1 here in. Oh, that's redundant, isn't it, to say CD District?
Right.
CD1. I don't mean to be redundant or monotonous or repetitive. He is a candidate for CD1 here in New Hampshire. And I did mention, of course, you were on my program earlier.
Yes.
So it's wonderful to continue the discussion
Absolutely,
here.
yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Do they call you people the Dirty Dozen?
We're only 11, so that
Oh,
would be
okay.
we'd be one short.
He's never watched the Dirty Dozen.
Really?
Would it be a dirty baker's dozen, or is that 13?
13's a
That's
bigger.
13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can't win with this dirty dozen thing.
No, you can't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And 11. And how much does it cost for you to get? What did Ray Buckley put as the price of voter information in CD1?
$37,500.
We heard only 29,000.
No.
It went up.
Must have gone up, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's that's a lot of dough.
It is, especially considering the Republicans give it to their candidates for free.
Yeah,
And
and
give what exactly? What are you gentlemen referring to?
So the voter information, so it's essentially all the Democratic or Republican, depending on party, Republican voters in your district, and then information if you have cell phone numbers, telephone numbers, emails. It's stuff that's gathered up. If you ever worked on a campaign, you go door to door and you take information out, and that all goes back into a system, and both parties have it. Our party charges congressional candidates $37,500 for access.
Okay.
The Republicans give it to their candidates for free.
Oh.
and
okay.
when did this start?
I would have no idea when that started. I just know that when we started this campaign, we were told that's how much it would cost. So
Oh wow, that's a lot of dough.
it is.
Particularly since some people probably, I'm just saying, from that have been in other campaigns. When I was running for state rep and stuff, it's to get anything out of the city party, I once had to 3 chairs ago say, I'm going to write something in Yahoo News if you don't give it to me. And then like Tim Smith saying, oh my God, I just got the stuff that I asked 2 months ago.
No kidding. Wow.
Tim Smith was my state
Yeah.
rep,
Yeah.
and he was running for re-election in 2014. Yeah, so
So how do you mitigate that as a candidate? Well, like what? I mean, obviously you have to come up with ways to,
Right.
to get around that.
That's right. So I think one of the things we learned from Donald Trump in 2016 was the power of free media. I'm here with you gentlemen tonight. I was on your radio show. I was on Mr. O'Connell's show. But also we have Facebook, Twitter, websites, and then this new great invention, Facebook Live. So you can just reach directly to voters. You can buy your various voters lists from the different municipalities. And also you got to show up.
Right.
You got to show up to different events. You go to every town, every city that has a Democratic club or organization. You show up and you address them. You go to the state convention. We have the Progressive Summit this weekend in Manchester, which is somewhat of an offshoot of the Sanders campaign. Nina Turner will be there, Arnie Arnson. So you go to these events and you get your name out there. And something I would do is I answer questions fully and truthfully, which I think is refreshing for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, that will make you. What was it that Henry David Thoreau said? if you are right, you know you're right, and you know, and your name, I can't remember exactly, but a majority of one. You know, if you know you're right, and your neighbors are wrong, makes you a majority of one.
Right.
But and I felt like that sometimes. But that's one of the reasons my face is numb right now.
Right.
That's why Matt is here.
Plus, you can't really say that your neighbors are wrong because you want them to vote for you.
Right.
Right. I'm not running for anything.
Yeah, he's not going to worry about it.
Well, that's very true. Yes.
God knows what my worries are. Let's not get into that. Matt,
Yes.
what was the most interesting about? Well, there was a lot of stuff. Matt was saying how interesting you were as
Yeah.
a guest.
Well, we were talking about, so we talked about quite a few things on,
Yep.
on my show. One of the things that we did touch on was the drug war
Yes.
and cannabis and whatnot. I would like to ask you a little bit deeper on that. Are you for full legalization of cannabis?
Yeah, absolutely. Full legalization. Let it be sold. Let it be taxed. Let it be regulated. You know, and again, you know, it would be just treated the same as we do alcohol or tobacco.
Yeah. Do you think it's inevitable here in New Hampshire?
Absolutely. It's unfortunate that the live free or die state is further behind everyone else in New England. It's crazy. It kind of goes against our entire motto. And
Yeah.
and we already have an infrastructure in place to make it happen. We have state liquor stores.
Mm-hmm.
They could be easily converted to sell marijuana as well. We have a structure in place to collect the taxes, all that stuff. It
Right.
just makes a lot of sense
Right.
to do it right now.
Now, what about the part that we didn't get to is the drug war in the larger context?
Right.
Are you for going further with that?
So I call the drug war is actually our longest running civil war.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's a war against ourselves. And we kind of touch on a little bit on your show is we're constantly fighting this on a demand side or excuse me, on a supply side and on the demand side. So we are stopping. Like, we have to stop cocaine or heroin or whatever coming from Afghanistan or Mexico or wherever. But it wouldn't be coming here if people didn't want to alter their reality, right?
Right.
So that's what's happening, and you can't fight it because we talked on the show, like, people are going to want to access drugs. All you're doing is making it illegal. They're not going to stop doing it.
Right.
So I think we need to take a totally different approach to what's going on with drugs and start looking at, you know, really get into the heart of, like, why do people want to alter their reality? What is it about life in America in 2018 that, you know, wants people to get into escapism and stuff like
Right.
that? And also at the same time, that's not always a bad thing. Like, you know, I don't think anyone's going to begrudge somebody going down to Margaritas and having a couple of drinks after work.
Right, exactly.
And
yeah.
relaxing and all that stuff like that. So we
Why are
need,
you inviting us after the show?
it is Taco Tuesday down there. So, yeah, so we have to look at it and maybe a little less of the false puritanism we have in America, too.
Right, right.
Now, I wrote about the movie industry for years and all sorts of things. We won't get into Kim Kardashian or any of that. But I'm going to tell you something. If you look at the globe when you're talking to Matt on your one shot, it'll actually look like, you know, you'll have
Oh,
a
I'm
better
talking to you at
angle.
home?
But,
Oh.
you know, you can tell people these things and they don't.
I can take direction.
Yeah.
Right.
But, you know,
yes.
if you actually look at that rather than... It looks so much better.
Okay, thank you.
Now, what would happen? Now, what if I look at the globe while speaking to our guest? What happens?
You'd look
then?
like Chris Herbert.
Right, yes. But see, I like what Chris Herbert does. Now, I haven't seen his show in a long time, so I assume he still does it. So if you're not aware, do you know Chris Herbert?
No, I don't.
He's an alderman.
What he does on his program is, instead of looking at that camera, because it's usually just him, instead of
Okay.
looking at that camera, he looks at the monitor, but it creates a cool effect. It looks like he's talking to a studio audience
Right.
because he's looking just slightly away from the camera.
Very
Right,
smart.
so
Yes.
but he's just doing it because he's looking at himself.
Right,
But
right.
it says, "Do not look
It
at the
says,
camera."
Don't look at
Right,
the camera. is
right.
One
So
instruction
he's-
I saw in here.
He's staring at the instruction to make sure he doesn't forget it. Is I think is what's going on there.
But you know, when you're looking at Matt, you have a very good profile. You know, you're obviously a Celt, right?
Exactly. Yes. Almost as pure blood as you can get. Yeah.
Oh, we don't talk about that on any of our family.
Certainly.
Can we use the word family anymore?
Family
the
of,
mafia connections. and
Oh my goodness! No, there's no such thing.
after
How
the
dare
Gary
you.
Hopper hour.
Right.
remember,
I'm very yes. We were not discussed. Please, we don't want to be talking about that in front
right.
of a prosecutor.
In front of a
Right. I
prosecutor.
am the police. So it'd be
Right.
good.
Are
yes.
you the first city prosecutor in Rochester?
I'm the first in-house city attorney in Rochester's history. Yeah. So
Why don't cities like Manchester have a city attorney?
They do. You got it's
Oh, it's
Emily
a city
Wright,
solicitor.
city
right.
solicitor.
Oh,
Yeah, we
okay.
call it city attorney in Rochester. City solicitor here. So, yeah.
So it's the same
Right,
thing, just a
it's-
different term.
Yeah,
Yeah, I forget because we had our little break. We had the breakdown over there that resulted in some resignations.
Right. I think what happened, and again,
Yeah.
I'm just saying from what I understood is that
Yeah.
the city solicitor side of the house sort of wasn't monitoring the prosecution side. Well, that doesn't happen in Rochester because I'm a former prosecutor. My deputy, she is the city prosecutor as well, so we're fully aware of what's going on
Right.
over there. And of course, when she's on vacation, I'm still prosecuting in the district courts in Rochester. So,
Okay.
yeah, not going to
Yeah, I
happen.
was just thinking,
Yeah.
district attorneys are elected a lot of them, like
in-
Los Angeles.
The county attorneys are elected, which is our district
Right,
attorney
right,
in
yeah.
Hampshire. So, but those are the only ones who are elected, just the county attorneys. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
What is being a prosecutor? What's that done for you? What perspective does that give you?
Well, I think it's really interesting. First of all, just from a strictly point of view as a professional, as an attorney, if you want to be a litigator, there's no better way to get experience than to be a prosecutor because you're sort of thrown in to the deep end right away as a young attorney because they don't have time to
Right.
baby you along. You have to go in there and work. So you're going to do more trials than certainly any of your peers doing civil law. Like, as you might know, civil cases don't go to trial that often. So
Yeah.
you're gaining all this experience. So from a practical point of view, if you want to be a litigator, there's basically no better training program than be a prosecutor. But that's not why I did it. I did because, getting out of the Army, I wanted to continue in public service. And why I like being a prosecutor is I think if you do it right and you do it ethically, you're always going to be the good guy. You're always going to be the guy or gal in the white hat because I know a lot of groups like to think that they're the great protectors of sort of civil rights, but I think there's no greater protector of civil rights than a competent prosecutor. When they get a case and they look at a file and say, wow, that search violated the Fourth Amendment, or you shouldn't have done that, and you dismiss those cases, or
Yeah.
or you have prosecutorial discretion into how high a charge you're going to do, and what the plea deal is going to be, and so I like that aspect of it. And then of course when I was a federal prosecutor, I really enjoyed getting involved in prosecuting corporations for
okay.
the violence they do to our economy, and I was also a counterterrorism, counterespionage, counterproliferation prosecutor,
Wow.
which is a whole other side of the house, which was just fascinating to be involved in.
I bet.
When you get the big top secret clearance, I always tell people it's not as cool as you think. They don't open a vault and you
Right.
get to see who actually shot Kennedy and see the aliens. Like, that doesn't happen, but it's still really cool
Well,
to be
talk
involved.
to
in.
me about the aliens after the show.
Yes,
Okay, well,
after the show.
after-
Honest? Oh, really?
Oh my! But it doesn't, because we were talking about this on my show a little bit too. Doesn't your time as a prosecutor also kind of inform your attitudes about the drug war?
Absolutely, and particularly when it comes to marijuana, it's just such a waste of resources. Every dollar we spend, every investigative hour we spend on anything to do with marijuana is something that could be spent going after what I consider to be criminals who are causing much more harm to us. In particularly, it's white collar criminals. I don't think just because someone's in a business suit doesn't mean they're not doing harm to you and your country. And,
Right.
and when one of the great disappointments for me in terms of the Obama administration is that those folks who bottomed out our economy in 2007,
Right.
2008, and not just the individual people, but the corporations, they got off scot-free.
Only
Oh, yeah.
one prosecution. Unlike the SNL
Right.
debacle.
Savings and loan,
Right.
not
Savings and
Saturday
Loan.
Night
Yeah,
Live.
and
The youngins might not know.
And even when we do prosecute white-collar cases, you'll often see that they don't get sentences that equate to what you would see.
Of course, yeah.
And you would see literally slaps on the wrist for people who are committing these crimes. They're like, no,
Yeah.
the effects on our lives are so much greater than some kid selling a couple of joints on the corner. You know?
Right, right. I remember Obama, he said, I think in one speech, it was something to the effect of, we're going to, it was while the bailout was in progress or at the beginning of it, we're going to prosecute people. We'll do it later. Trust me, we'll do it later.
And it never happened.
And it never happened,
Yeah,
of course, yeah.
And Eric Holder, he's a company man. He wasn't going to rattle any cages.
Right.
And look at Kamala Harris in California when she's Attorney General. She lets the mortgage industry, slap on the wrist.
Right.
Yep.
It's well, that's my problem with the Democratic Party now. It's not the party I grew up with.
Right.
It's almost like the Rockefeller Republicans,
and
except on social issues.
and that's
But
what I-
economically, it's it's just abandoned working people.
And that's what I talk about. And I actually talked about in my speech to the state convention this weekend is that, we had this power vacuum in the Democratic Party when we were sort of lost in the wilderness at the presidential level. And And into that power vacuum walked the Rockefeller Republicans, who had just been booted from the Republican Party by Goldwater and Reagan.
Right.
So what they did was they shifted the Democratic Party away from our roots, our populist roots, and sort of into the arms of Wall Street and big money.
Center-right party.
And now we have this, it's an odd combination. We have socially liberal policies mixed with laissez-faire capitalism, and I don't know who that exactly appeals to.
Right.
It doesn't...
No antitrust.
Right.
Under Clinton was the first president. Even McKinley prosecuted an antitrust case under the McKinley administration with the first antitrust laws. Clinton was the first president not to have a major antitrust case. He let Microsoft off the hook, which would have been better, like General Motors, if they'd been broken up. There's so much innovation, and it's like a conglomerate of many companies. But as you can see, like Apple, which is smaller, but
it's always
Democrat.
follow the money too, as far as who gets let off, right? You look at who like in the case of Obama, I mean, Wall Street pretty much
funded.
Yeah, but look at JFK. He wasn't afraid, and RFK as his Attorney General.
Yeah.
They went after. They put the Democratic bosses in jail.
And FDR wasn't afraid to take on Wall Street, and he was a patriarch from the Hudson Valley family. They predated America. They were so rich, and he took them on. And you talk about the Clinton administration. One of the things I talk about is restoring Glass-Steagall, like the separation of commercial banks from investment banks. It was a regime that worked for 60 years, and then
and kept us from having a depression, which we. How we escaped that, I never know.
And yet here we are, and they just passed a bill to gut Dodd-Frank, where we should actually be strengthening. We need to have a Glass-Steagall, and I talk about on my website. Elizabeth Warren agrees with that too, and I think we can have a Warren O'Rourke Act for the 21st century to restore Glass-Steagall and bring those protections back that served us so well for 60-something years.
America is a Ponzi scheme. That's the way I see it.
Well, there are those.
The Democrats are in on it too.
There are those who say the system is designed to ultimately collapse in on itself as we keep accruing more and more debt. And
it's like people that knew the Clintons back when they're coming here in New Hampshire for the 1992 primary. They're quite different people. Those are middle-class people that didn't have money. And then when they were coming in 2016, they're plutocrats themselves.
Of course.
And that's... Yeah. And I'm not going to put... I love Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Yes. Something we didn't get to on my show is I mentioned the system. Debt is obviously out of control. The deficit now under Republicans, I guess, now have decided deficits don't matter.
Well,
Dick
what
Cheney
about
said.
Reagan? He tripled the
but now
deficit.
it's more so than ever before under Trump. I mean, we're going into numbers we've never seen before.
An obscene defense spending.
Oh
It's
yeah.
And so it's not just the government that's in debt; it's all of us. Highest rates of personal and corporate debt is at an all-time high. And there's a great article in the Washington Post a few weeks ago, and it's been referenced in a lot of business magazines. Is that the next big bubble is going to be? They're calling it the buyback bubble. And what Wall Street has done with what they've gotten back with the tax returns isn't invested back in their people. Certainly not investing it back in their companies. What they've done is turn this equity into debt by taking money and giving it out to the shareholders. So it's similar to what happened with before the 2007-2008 collapse, where first of all, I have too much home that I can afford because I got a subprime mortgage. But then I'm taking a mortgage, a loan against that house. Instead of putting it back in the house by replacing the roof or putting a new deck on or replacing the shingles or whatever, I just buy a TV. I buy a car. I buy my kids whatever Xbox or whatever it is. So then when your value of your house collapses because it wasn't actually worth that much. Not only are you defaulting on your mortgage, you're defaulting all these other loans. Well, that's what's happening right now with big businesses. They're taking loans out to pay their shareholders based on the increased value of their company, which they're also artificially increasing by buying back all this stock. And there's this gigantic bubble out there getting ready to burst. And what the Trump tax cuts did was just supercharge that.
Right.
So again, people I don't think are paying attention to what's
people
actually
don't
happening.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton did talk about the debt. It's funny, after the quadrupling or whatever under the Republicans that preceded him. He tried to get a handle on that, and then Bush comes in, has the oil wars that since I was a 13-year-old we're trying to avoid, and when I was in the Army, and then the debt just skyrockets again, and...
Well, even Greg Moore from Americans for Prosperity, I don't know if you know Greg, I've interviewed him, and he actually said that Bill Clinton was the last truly fiscally conservative president.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was a bipartisan consensus. Yeah. We had Warren Rudman, who he was a Republican, but I was proud that was a senator.
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
Right.
But it was a different era. Kelly Ayotte I like, and without the lunatics in the Republican Party, she might have been another Warren Rudman. Who knows?
Yeah.
But she didn't. She let them compromise it.
Right.
But it was a different era, where Democrats and Republicans tried to do something.
Do stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
But personal debt. See, I grew up in a time where you get 4.5% on the first dollar you put in an account.
Right.
Savings account. There aren't savings banks anymore.
Right.
1934, that's which created the savings banks and S&Ls, and our own local invention brought down from Quebec, the credit union.
Right.
All gone.
Gone.
Yeah. So what about now? You did, or one of you mentioned defense, the defense budget.
Which Carol's been on the committee. What do you call the committee? Armed Services Committee.
Yeah. I mean, how does this keep happening? It's like we spend exponentially more than anybody else.
It doesn't
in the
make
world.
us any safer.
And right. Well, or who really knows? I mean, that's kind of an intangible, but. I mean, isn't a lot of this money wasted on contracts for things that we don't actually use, don't actually need?
Yeah, and again, you don't want to be too cynical because you won't be able to get through the day and be involved in the process. But you follow the money on who these politicians are funded by. The defense industry is right up there with Wall Street. And of course, these Wall Street groups, already hedge fund managers, they're diversifying their portfolios by investing in defense. So it's all interrelated there. But at the same time, I also think what happens is the idea of spending on defense is so important to a lot of people politically that they don't actually want to stop it from happening.
Right.
And a great example is all the money that gets spent, I think, and I'm not just saying that because I'm an Army guy. I just want to make this clear. But there's a lot of money being spent on a lot of new boats and ships. I know I'm probably not using the right term, but for the Navy. And we haven't had a naval battle since Coral Sea in 1945. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
If you read the military, the press, the aircraft carrier is obsolete now because you can put a anti-ship missile on just a little atoll and it can defeat the screen of ships that normally go with them. So you've got this behemoth that's obsolete.
Right.
And these countries we're fighting don't have navies. They don't have air forces. They were destroying us with roadside bombs made out of old Nokia cell phones and old artillery cells.
The Viet Cong,
And yet when Trump says, we got to rebuild the Navy, our Navy's depleted, people just eat it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're not actually doing the hard research.
But where are the Democrats to call that?
Well, that's true.
And they don't. That's the point.
Yeah.
I think and what I'd like to do I'd like to be on the Armed Services Committee because having been in the military and being a junior officer in the combat arms, you look at these guys and gals with all their medals and their rank, and I'm not impressed.
Oh, but I'm not
impressed.
It's absolutely true. It's like I tell them, I've been in a room with a 4-star general. You don't even want to be in there.
Right.
But civilians, some reason, all that fruit salad impresses
It does
them.
impress them, and it won't impress me.
With the World War II generation, except for the Archie Bunkers and the professionals, like all the great writers of that era were World War II vets.
Right.
And they were also cynical about the military.
Exactly. You can't help
Yeah.
it. And I was actually my unit's budget officer when I was at the brigade staff, so I understand how it works, and I understand the tricks of the trade. And
Right.
everything, so
Oh, yeah.
no one's going to pull the wool over my eyes.
Yeah. But it's a tough message. People eat that up. And this is a little bit of a side street, but a big pet peeve I have is you see these retired generals and colonels who go on cable news all the time, and of course their answer to everything is always more war, right? Anything you talk about, their answer is more war. And what they never tell you, they don't disclose that this person actually sits on the board
Correct.
of BAE or whomever. whatever, and
Absolutely.
that's never mentioned.
Yeah.
But they have a particular
Yeah.
agenda.
I
of
agree.
course.
It's really shameful, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing. You know, you have some pride in your service, and don't go down that road. I'm not saying don't serve on the board of BAE and all the things. I'm saying
Right.
Don't go on the news and promote endless war because it's going to fill the pockets of your benefactor.
Right,
That's
right.
That's wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, of
Yeah.
course.
People don't talk about it. It's my friends. I'm going to be 59. I have friends a little older than me. We were at Boston University with Howard Zinn, the famous left-wing historian, and they can't believe that one of them, Steve, I think Steve Cohen had been on our shows.
Yeah.
One of the premier whistleblower attorneys, and if not the premier whistleblower attorney in the world. But he also wrote a book about draft resistance, which goes back to revolution, everything. People resisting being drawn into the militia, whatever. But people just aren't questioning these wars.
Yeah.
And there was this kid, these smiling faces, this, I don't know what generation we're talking about now. One of the kids running for state rep, they had this ceremony, kids going off into the military, and he says, "Oh, thank you for your service," even though they didn't have it. And I'm just thinking, here's some kid, and I told him privately, you don't even know what you're saying.
Right.
You don't know what you're saying, because I know. I know what war is. You have to kill men, women, and children. And there's guys up at the VA that have to deal with that every day of their lives.
Right.
Kids coming back
Right.
from Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as guys that have been dealing with for over 50 years.
Right.
Exactly.
And people, that was true. Audie Murphy, they told him that before the invasion of Sicily. And sure enough, that's what war is.
Yeah.
But now it's so sanitized.
Well, sanitized because most people aren't involved in it.
Right.
Most
Yeah.
Americans aren't in the military or have a family member, so they don't know. It's the American military is at war. The country isn't at war.
Well,
the
the
country
peop-
goes back on with its lives, and the rest, like you're saying, the folks who go and fight these wars, you got to live with it forever, and that means your family's got to live with it forever as well.
In
Right.
World War II, you had FDR's sons were in
Absolutely.
the military. Joe Kennedy's
Joe
sons.
Kennedy's, yep.
In fact, when Joe Kennedy II got killed, one of FDR's sons was there too in
Yep.
the flight,
Yep.
and they knew each other. And you had people like Jock Whitney, one of the richest men in the world. Just unbelievable wealth, joined the OSS and is in France and everything. But by Vietnam, it's strictly class.
Absolutely.
Class.
Yeah, of
Yep.
course.
And then after the early Vietnam War, where you have a John Kerry as an officer, by the time you get to the utter breakdown of the military in the 70s under Nixon, you're having the William Calleys, who not the sharpest
Never should
knife
have been
in
an
the
officer.
drawer.
Right.
But it's just amazing because I still hear these stories to this day about fragging and
Yeah.
people like you met one of my friends in Vietnam when Nixon's saying you're not there, and
Right.
those are the MIAs we all heard about because
Yeah.
the Marines don't bring out all their dead, not when you're where you're not supposed to be. But nowadays it's like it's Disneyland. And we don't even have the benefit of like New York City, which I grew up in, which was a hellhole. Now it's like Times Square is
Yeah.
Disneyland.
Yeah.
But war is not Disneyland.
Absolutely not.
It's hid,
Well, we are entering though an exciting new era in terms of warfare with the Space Force. I mean, we're gonna have a whole new branch of the military. I personally cannot wait to see the uniforms. That's what I'm excited about.
I wonder if Ivanka's going to be. I think we should have naval ranks, but from the RAF. So you have like a wing commander instead
In
of
the
a
space.
colonel or a captain, and we have marshals too, and a
Yes.
commodore.
Yes.
Ivanka could be the
It
commodore.
would be wonderful.
I-
Would
Why
you want to
not?
go like full time military again if you could carry a
You
lightsaber?
can still. You're only.
You know, it was
39.
funny. It was. I don't know. You get the.
You look a little like Mark
You're
Hamill.
you were an officer.
The
You notice that? He looks a little like Mark Hamill.
Well, maybe.
He was my favorite when I was a kid. So the Army Times, you remember the Army Times? So
Oh,
it has
yes.
all this,
I still look
it's
at it
very
occasionally.
important. Tells the pay ranks, all this stuff. So it was a real, almost like a trade magazine.
It
Yeah.
is a yeah.
So it can, you can become an astronaut out of the United States Army.
Yeah.
And I was a lieutenant, and I go, whoa, they're looking for applications to be an astronaut. I'm like, I'm airborne. I can go be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And look, and there's all these degrees of the prerequisites.
Oh, really?
to be an
Engineer.
astronaut. Engineer, like something no one in the
Aeronautics.
Army would have.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Right.
none of us would have. So basically, you could become an astronaut.
An Air
in the
Force
Army,
pilot. If you're an
but,
Air Force
yeah,
pilot.
There never happened. So that ended my dream of being an astronaut.
Well, now
No.
you've got it.
Yes, the dream need not be dead.
Yeah,
You can-
if political science now counts as a science to be an astronaut, I'll be good.
If we're gonna have some aliens to fight, then you know,
Exactly.
then-
Yeah.
I don't want to be
Starship
invaded by
Troopers.
Jupiter. You know, it'll be
You don't know.
2001 Space Odyssey can be told now.
yes,
Jupiter and beyond.
That's right.
Who'd have thunk that Donald Trump had such insight?
He sure does. He certainly does.
You know, they just re-released 2001,
I did, I saw
which
it.
was the great movie of the time. You know, if you wanted to drop acid, a little cannabis,
Sure.
or whatever. And
sure.
I was too young. It was later on, you know.
Yes.
In the rerun.
But now feel free.
Maybe he'd seen it, you know. I
Maybe
think
Donald saw it.
yeah.
Maybe Trump had seen it. Well, he certainly didn't drop acid.
Well, you know,
He's
Dr.
Kim.
Jeff Cassell
He's
said
very
he-
straight edge.
Dr. Jeff Cassell, who was there at Pennsylvania with him, says he wasn't a teetotaler. Although I could have got that wrong.
Oh my!
Don't wanna get
well, that would
sued.
very much
Yeah, he will
conflict.
sue you, too.
Yes.
I don't know if Dr. Jeff Cassell will.
No, he
Trump
won't.
will.
But Trump will. Yes, that'd be good
He
publicity
threatened.
for you.
Threatened. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it was good publicity. The last lawsuit.
Well, so we started to talk at the end of my show, but we kind of gave it short shrift because we were out of time. But it is obviously a very important. The VA, you know, it's something that I talk a lot about, and John, of course, as a veteran, very passionate about it.
because that is one of my healthcare providers.
Yes, of course. And, you know, I mean, it's my perception. I'm not a veteran. My dad is a veteran. He was in the Navy. And I remember a few years ago he had a heart attack. He made a full recovery and he's good. But I remember him getting the letter. He got a letter from the VA, which was very nice. And it said, you know, something to the effect of, he read to me the letter and he was very encouraged by it. And it talked about how, you know, you served your country and now it's our turn to serve you with your health and whatnot. And he really liked the letter, and I just remember thinking, that doesn't sound. I mean, that sounds too good to be true, just based on, you know, a lot of veterans I know who have to jump through all kinds of hoops just to get simple care. And it turns out he's had to jump through all kinds of hoops and all kinds of mismanagement that he's had to try to wade through. So it's kind of a broad question, but what do we do?
So, obviously, as we talked in the last show, I believe in universal, not-for-profit healthcare. Next step, Medicare for all, and then of course a national health system is I think where we need to end up. And at that point, veterans would be involved in that system like anybody else. And what I think at that point the VA would be something for specialized injuries that veterans suffer from, particularly when you start talking about limbs being blown off, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, things that you're not going to see. Your average doctor at CMC or the LA is not.
And don't show the camera. Keep it on Mr. Rocon. The wounds that they get, like in Iraq,
Exactly.
because they're holding the rifle. I don't want to.
Exactly. It's all.
It's
so that's where the VA would be in the future.
yeah.
But in the meantime,
the people coming back from these wars.
we talked about in your radio show, what happened to the VA is that no one planned for these wars, the long-term cost of them. And I think that, when you went in there, or the idea is, I remember Rumsfeld, you fight with the army you have, not the army you wish you had. And it seems like that whole gung-ho attitude went straight down the line, including the VA, and they really didn't anticipate almost like the Monty Python skit, no one anticipates the Spanish Inquisition.
Right.
They didn't see the insurgency coming in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Or they refused to
to see it. Anyone
Which is
could have
much
told
more
you.
likely,
Anyone could have told you that was going to be a counterinsurgency
You could read
operation.
the book A Savage War Peace about the Algerian War,
Correct.
which they actually use
Right.
in.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we were told we'd be
In
greeted
and
as
out,
liberators.
greeted as liberators, in and out.
And you pay
I
with
think
oil money with you.
Yeah.
pay
it's almost like a
for-
nightmare. You're reliving it, just thinking here. Like somebody said 6 months, I think, was what they said initially.
Right.
And it was actually General Shinseki who said, no, it's going to be much longer and we need more soldiers. And they essentially fired him, retired him.
They got rid of the Powell Doctrine, who was a Vietnam vet,
Yeah.
where you can't go in unless
Without
you can get out
an
real
exit strategy.
quickly.
You break
right.
it, you own it.
Right.
Right,
So
and-
then we had these young people coming back, with these injuries that they weren't prepared for. The infrastructure wasn't in place.
Which
and
you wouldn't survive. You can survive
you
now.
can survive now.
Right.
And the traumatic brain injuries they can treat right there. They
Yeah.
pop the back of your skull off and they
You
put
live.
the cold pack on. Right, but the consequences of a TBI is
Correct.
just- yeah.
And they weren't ready for 21, 22-year-old men and women coming back
Yeah.
and needing a lifetime of care. And not, again, we talked about earlier, it's not just
Right.
the physical part of it, it's also the emotional and mental part of it. And what else does the VA do? It's not just the medical. The VA is supposed to be offering, career services to these people. And
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah.
trying to put you back together physically, and at the same time, how do I make you the best person you can be going forward in society, and what you want to be, and what's realistic for you going forward? They weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
And now we're still facing the consequences. And again, as we talked about in your radio show earlier, it's when they realized it, when the OS moment, like, oh, this
Right.
happened.
Right.
Instead of coming forward and being clean about it and saying we need to spend, we need to fix this,
And we need to fund it.
they went into
yeah.
cover-up mode, PR
Right,
mode,
right.
And then that same General Shinseki ended up, losing his gig at VA because he was
Yeah.
essentially not working the problem, or was being isolated from the situation, which is a problem for any general, any leader.
Of course.
And now here we are. We're 2018, and it's still not fixed yet.
Yeah.
And here in Manchester, which serves New Hampshire, we had a
Yeah.
scandal that brings the now departed. I think two of them have already
Come
since
and
he's
gone.
departed. Yeah,
Wow.
New Hampshire,
Yeah.
a scandal in the VA.
And we consider how, compared to most states, New Hampshire has such a higher percentage of veterans as a
Right.
percentage of our population, and yet we don't have a full-time VA hospital.
Yeah,
and
it's strange.
It's very strange. We're the only one.
Yeah.
And we piggyback off of the five-star hospital in Bedford,
Yeah.
Mass, where I go. I go there for my mental health care because that was devastated with
Yeah.
the stuff going on. That's one thing, treating PTSD, but that's a whole show in itself, and let's not
Right.
go there.
But right though, because
Well, my whole face will be numb.
one veteran in New Hampshire, as you're saying, may have to be going down to Massachusetts for
Right.
service, but then up to Vermont.
Right.
Right.
For other
Oh
things.
yeah, we all talk about where you go up to White River
Yeah.
Junction,
And then even for,
which Al Montoya came
I was
from,
talking
the
to
director.
some fellas at an American Legion up in North Conway, and even coming down to Manchester, is tough for them. That's a long
Sure.
haul for them.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And plus, a lot of them don't want to come to Manchester, but
And then you don't get your travel pay for was it 2 or 3 times, which is
Exactly.
irrational.
And some of
Yeah.
these people can't travel on their own.
Right.
And they need to be transported. Generally cabs, right?
When
Right.
you send the people down to Boston, because Boston's also a 5-star, but it's got the Massachusetts veterans to take care
Of
of.
course.
And you'll see guys from New Hampshire, old veteran, crying because of a snafu. You've already traveled on a bus to Boston, been through this,
Yes.
It's heartbreaking.
and it's either because it's just there are problems,
It's-
particularly when you're not funded and you don't have the
You're not
staff,
funded.
and it's just horrible. But the Manchester one claims it was a 4-star, but it was the 2 5-star hospitals in Massachusetts. They're kind of piggybacking off of that,
Yeah.
and
And you're not fulfilling your promise you made to these women
Right.
and men who swore
Yeah.
to protect and defend the country, and you made a promise to them. And you're not, if you can't keep promises to
Yeah.
them, how can anyone trust you to keep any promises?
well, come back. We can have a whole show on that
Oh,
because
easily, yeah.
the congressperson from CD1 traditionally is the point person for
Yes.
the VA.
Right, and Carol, I think, has been on front of this issue, but then when the seat goes back and forth, and
Yeah.
on the 4th, it goes to Mayor, then Representative Ginta. It in my opinion, it
Right,
fell
and
off the radar.
that's a whole nother show, and
I'll leave that to you Manchester guys to have that show. But that's just my opinion.
No, but I'm just saying it is like a whole show itself.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And but we got other questions. What other?
Well,
questions?
I wanted to actually piggyback on that a little bit because you explained the cause, and that's interesting to me because I've never heard anyone explain it quite that way. So that makes a lot of
Oh yeah,
sense.
Bill
But
Clinton talked. We talked about that.
no, but I mean, as far as the Iraq War.
Oh well, Bill
Bush.
Clinton. I was talking to him because
Oh, okay.
nobody was better to veterans than Bill Clinton.
Right.
And I was telling him and Hillary that, and it's true because my father was DAV. I'd go to various hospitals, but people are surviving.
Yeah.
They can. starting when you were 2000, they can inject the wound with plastic. There
Right.
are wounds you survive.
Yeah.
Stuff you could never survive before.
But so we've identified
Robert was blown apart.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was in Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
They had right on the battlefield. They can put plastic, like valves in.
Yeah.
And,
But so we've identified the causes, but what is the solution?
So right, the
I
solution.
think you already did. Tell us.
Yeah, it is,
Go again.
is to fully fund it and actually deliver the care. That's the short-term solution of VA. The long-term solution, I think, in our country is, again, we have to have a national health system for
Okay.
everybody.
Right.
But
And
and then
this-
VA becomes a specialized centers for veterans. But in the meantime, you got to fully fund it, and promises don't mean anything without
Yeah.
the money to back it up.
Yeah.
And also, I think
Yeah.
an interesting.
And veterans are going out now, like the CMC.
We have
and other places.
in terms of the VA secretary. I think it's interesting, and I think Trump has
Do we even
nominated.
have one now?
I think he nominated somebody.
He
Nominated the Dr. Jackson or Admiral,
Admiral.
whatever the heck, Admiral Jackson.
Oh, Ronnie Jackson.
He
Yeah.
could be a Commodore in the space Force.
Exactly,
Yes,
and
yes.
then I think he has nominated this other fellow who I think was the acting director. And if you start looking at the history of VA secretaries, you're not. Actually, the guy Trump fired had a medical background.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of it. It's almost been like an honorific for veterans, and
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and instead
The
of
head of the DAV under Clinton.
yeah, and
Or
then
Max Cleland.
and then it was Jim Nicholson under W, and then these guys who don't have a background running a medical system, and it's not just a
Yeah.
doctor isn't correct either. Maybe the head of the VA right now, I know they have two missions, like we talked about, the health side, and then the sort of the career service side, but we need somebody who knows how to run a large scale medical system.
Right.
And
Right.
it kills me when you have a fellow like Trump, and again, let's just take him at his word that he's a great businessman. And seemingly, right, he must know people, at least who know people who can run these systems.
Right. Right.
And I always think about Walmart, for example, the distribution system they run, the worldwide distribution system they run.
Yeah.
There's a guy or a woman doing that, right?
Yeah.
There's a person who's doing that, or
Yeah.
a group of people in charge. Why can't a guy like Trump reach out to these folks, particularly donors to his campaign or Republican actors, and say, I need your guy, I need your woman, I need them to come help me run the VA.
Yeah. He told us he'd have all the best
He
people.
did say he would have our best, and
Yeah.
it hasn't happened. So even on those promises, which you would think a quote-unquote businessman could make,
Well,
it
maybe
ha-
we can get somebody from
it has-
Putin.
Oh, there you go.
how's the VA system in Russia? That's a good question.
Yeah, how
You're
we need to
shocked.
research that. Yes.
You've already drunk yourself, or you're a mercenary, or you're running a crime syndicate.
Right, exactly.
It's a good training to get out of the Russia.
Yes. Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
But it's a lot of I'm just saying Trump. It's a lot of false promices.
Yeah.
But again,
And there's so many positions that need to be filled at the VA,
it's
and they're not being filled.
and it's not just the VA. And again, we don't want to get too far abroad on Trump because I think in terms of as a
Right.
Democrat, we have to have a vision for the future. And as the Persians say, this too shall pass.
Right.
He will be gone at some point. But you just wonder he is the president, but he is a Republican nominally. Like there's supposed to be an apparatus there to
Yeah.
fill these positions. Both
Yeah.
parties, right?
Right.
As a Democrat Republican becomes president, these positions get filled.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened. I don't know if it's by design. I don't know why. There's positions, not just in the VA, it's all these departments, positions that have to be appointed by the president, have to be
Yeah.
approved by the Senate. It's not that they're being held up by the Senate. He flat out
Isn't
has
doing
not appointed people to these positions.
Right. Yeah.
And why is no one asking in his own party? Like, you would think even in the
No,
spoil
they're
system,
all afraid of him.
you would think like a guy,
Right.
a senator from Missouri might be like, man, my general inspector position is empty here in Missouri. I promised that to
The only
so and
ones.
so. Why is it not happening?
They haven't figured out how they can stick somebody in there to steal yet. There's nothing left to steal.
Or does he not listen? I mean, I don't know. It's just
Well, the only ones who dare say anything to him are the ones who aren't running for re-election.
Like Jeff Flake.
Like they get really courageous and they'll stand up to him if they
you
have
know
nothing to
something?
lose. But
It's once again bipartisanship. The only person sticking really up for veterans is Bernie Sanders, and he's not even a Democrat. And in
Right.
our New Hampshire party, candidates aren't talking about the Veterans Hospital. They aren't talking about veterans. That's true.
Well, it seems on again. I'm an observer of the second district. There is a fella. I believe there's a Republican running who's
Right.
Dr. Negron, or is that right? Or am I? No, Lewinson.
But I'm talking about Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about it. That's not a priority of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. Just as corruption. I'm looking at the platform. No anti-corruption platform.
At least amongst, and again, I can't
Yeah.
speak for everybody,
Yeah.
but most of the candidates that I know on our side, we are talking about the VA Medical Center in Manchester.
Well, I haven't heard it. And I'm a veteran.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what's getting out in the media about the events we're having, but
They come to.
I do hear it.
But they come to our meetings at the Manchester Democrats and they don't talk about it. It's not in their campaign literature or anything, honestly. Because the New Hampshire Democratic Party, right up in Concord, they don't care about this. They don't.
And again, I would just, I don't know, it's hard to, we're not New York City, so we have limited media here in New Hampshire, so I don't know what's getting out there, but I would say that if you come to a forum and whatnot, you're going to hear candidates talk about it.
But I haven't.
I
actually reamed
come
one
to the
out
next
for
forum. Then. So.
You know what we didn't.
And you got 10 minutes, about 8 minutes.
Yeah. You know what we didn't get to on my show at all, and it relates to the drug issue, but we really didn't talk about heroin.
Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals.
And,
right here.
pharmaceuticals, yes.
Why do you want to legalize pharmaceutical grade heroin?
Oh, that's an interesting idea, but no, that's not where I was going.
Well, you heard it first from Matt Connarton, not me.
That'd be to go ahead and spread that, because that would be good publicity. There's no such thing as bad publicity unless you're a
Unless you
politician.
get sued.
Right, or unless you get sued.
Right.
That's true. No, but I mean, what?
The opioid crisis, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. What should we be doing to address that?
So again, you don't want to always go to my website, but go to my website. But there's many approaches we have to take to this. But I think first and foremost, we got to understand the nature of how this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And doctors have been overprescribing opioids for years, and we know that now. And you're going to see a lot of towns, cities, counties, states are suing the manufacturers, and we know that it's very similar to the tobacco litigation, where we know that they knew what the effects that these were going to have on communities, but they did it anyway because the profits were so great. So what we have to understand is that I don't want to see a system anymore where the easy answer is to hand a pill to somebody and say, oh, here you go, here's some oxycodone, here's some Percocet, go on your way. And then when the prescription ends, you come to the doctor goes, I don't see anything wrong with you. And you say, well, doc, I'm still feeling pain. He goes, sorry. And you walk out the door and you believe that you were a patient taking medicine, but what in fact you have become is addicted to opioids.
Right.
And so what are you going to do at that point? You can no longer get them legally. So your body is craving it, your mind is craving it. So you end up going into the illicit opioid market, which is heroin, but also this fentanyl coming from China, which is being mixed with opium from Afghanistan, which is so dangerous because you don't know what you're getting. So now people have been sent down this road where they start out with quote unquote legitimate drugs, and now they're out in the black market.
A lot of it's veterans, yeah.
And a lot of it's veterans, and to get high off of let's use heroin, though we are actually, unfortunately, this crisis is shifting more towards fentanyl.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to get high off of heroin than to get a six-pack of beer.
Right.
And that's because the market has been flooded from heroin coming from Mexico, mostly in our country, and then, of course, coming from Afghanistan through Canada and the rest of Europe. So until we get that under control, nothing is going to change. And then another part of it is, of course, once somebody comes into our system, and unfortunately, how are they coming into our system? Through the criminal justice process. Yeah. And something I've said is, like, if you're still committing crimes and you're putting society in danger, even if you're an addict, I still have to, my duty as a prosecutor is to protect the community from you. Okay?
Do you have a drug court in Rockingham?
Rockingham.
Well, you're not Rockingham County.
No, we're Stratford County. We do have a drug court in Stratford County.
Because it took up for a long time to get one in Hillsborough North.
And Rockingham forever, too. But once you make that decision, once someone has made the decision that, I get it, I need help.
Yeah.
It has to be treated like a healthcare issue.
Yeah.
All right? And they have to be taken in right away to get treatment. Because how many bites are you going to get at this apple, right? When someone decides, I'm going to get clean, if they're not taken in somewhere right away to get
Oh,
help,
that's true, because we have the veterans.
where do they go back to? So
Yeah.
you show up and say, I want help, and someone says,
And then-
okay, let me put you on a list.
Right,
Right.
if they go
Yeah.
get it quick, they'll become runners. They'll run away, and then, vets have to go try to find.
Exactly. So if you don't take them in right away, get them in a bed, get them into treatment right away,
Yeah.
they're going to go back to where they just came from, which is in a situation where people are doing drugs,
Right.
where they're still in the same bad economic situation they're in. So that's what has to happen, and we're not doing that. We're losing these people, and it may be the one chance you have to get them clean. So that,
Yeah.
it's going to take funding,
Right.
and
There's the ticket.
I understand it costs money, but it's either that or we lose a generation. I mean,
But to back up a little bit,
Yeah.
because you talked about how, so the person who is on opioids and now the doctor says that's it, no more, you said, well, we need to solve that problem. So how do you solve that problem? Because there's also people who need to be on them.
Of
who
course,
are-
yeah. Well, I think, and we investigate cases like this where doctors weren't actually prescribing these drugs because it was based upon the injury they were seeing. They were doing it because they're pill mills, some of them,
Right.
and others it was
Pain
just they're
clinics.
pain clinic, and they're
Which I
just,
didn't even know existed.
We're just and they're really prevalent if you go down like Alabama and Florida.
Right, I'd never heard of them
doctors are
before.
in a mobile home running these pill mills, so they need to be held accountable. If a doctor is writing a prescription for an opioid or any drug, in fact, any controlled drug that isn't related to a medical diagnosis, they need to be prosecuted the same way you would prosecute a street level drug dealer.
Wow.
If you're a drug pusher in
Degree.
a lab coat, I don't care. You're a drug pusher, and they need to be prosecuted. And I understand that's a harder
Yeah.
case to make. It's easier to make the case of the kid down, outside of Valley Street here, selling on the
Yeah.
corner. That's an easy case to make. Oh, I get that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't make the case against these doctors, because that's how
Yeah.
you change behaviors.
Because there is an unintended consequence to that, though, that I've seen up close with someone I love right here in New Hampshire with some of the laws, is that a person can be denied the opiates that they need
Right.
when they do have a legitimate medical condition because the doctor, the prescriber, doesn't understand, is confused about the laws, is confused about what the restrictions are, so then doesn't want to prescribe what they actually should be prescribing
Right.
in a legitimate instance. And that is something I've seen very much up close.
Yeah, and we've heard about that too. But again, it comes down to making sure you're investigating the doctor specifically, and
Yeah.
you're right, and you don't want good doctors being wrapped up in these things.
Right.
So they're painting with a much broader cloth, and maybe a scalpel
Right.
would have been necessary.
Yeah, agreed.
But we only got a minute or so, but that's a whole nother show. We
yeah.
can come back
Exactly, yeah.
because
Oh yeah, it's a
I
big
know
topic.
people
Yep, it's a big topic.
the veterans, when all of a sudden they decide because of an election going on in 2016,
Yeah.
oh, you're all cut off. It's like
Yeah,
these
oh, yeah.
guys,
And we touched on it
veterans
earlier, and I know we only got a short
Yeah,
amount of
we
time,
only
but
got 2 minutes.
one of the sad things in terms of veterans is they aren't getting access to medical marijuana.
Right.
And there's no
And-
marijuana research into cannabis for PTSD, which
Right.
that's kind of shocking.
When everyone knows that it works.
Right.
I don't know if everyone knows
Well,
it works.
Well,
Again,
right.
we're talking about science
But we don't
earlier,
know.
denying
We
science.
don't know because it hasn't really been funded totally to
Yeah.
a degree.
Or if you're a politician, who's funded by the pharmaceutical lobby, you know it works, but
Unless it's legal,
but
then
you
they-
can't say
they'll-
it works.
and then they'll push it.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, right, you can go into the history
Yeah.
of why marijuana
But, yeah.
is illegal, and pharmaceuticals wrap up in that as well. So,
Absolutely.
But
Yep.
I grew up when I was 12 years old in the Nixon. There was a crisis then, and I can bring in an article written by a U.S. senator that it was ads for Geritol and stuff that were making people open to taking heroin and stuff. And it was a serious article, but I think it was Mike
Wow.
Gravel
Re-
of Alaska.
really?
You know, it was at 100 years old. He was on the happy warpath again.
Yeah,
I think, in
I remember that,
2008.
yes.
But no, do come on. There's so much to
Okay,
talk
absolutely,
about, and there's so little time. But Matt's got plenty of radio time.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
Absolutely.
next week.
You're
though.
welcome
We're
anytime. Next
we're
week,
all
next
on
week we're
hiatus.
off.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be celebrating. What are we going to be celebrating?
4th of July.
Oh, I thought it was something to do with the Bastille. Oh, that's next.
You already missed that, right?
No, that went by, I think.
No, that's
Four-
July 14th, isn't it?
Is it?
I was in Paris once when that happened.
Oh,
It was exciting.
it sounds exciting. Yeah.
We actually did burn something down, but I can't remember now because of all that intake of cannabis.
Yes, of course.
And, well, I guess
Astronauts report it feels good. This is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Astronauts report it feels good.